The apartment was small but perfect. A cozy one-bedroom with a tiny balcony overlooking the park where we used to sit and dream about our future. I'd spent weeks picking out paint swatches, imagining where we'd put the couch, the bookshelves, and the bed we'd share. Moving in with Josh felt like the next chapter of my life, a chapter I'd been eagerly turning toward for months. He wasn't just my first serious boyfriend, he was the love of my life. Josh had this way of making me feel like I was the only person in the world. His laugh was infectious, his touch electric, and his plans for us, marriage, a dog, maybe kids someday, felt like promises written in stone. I was head over heels, utterly consumed by him. My friends teased me about being so smitten, but I didn't care. I'd found my person. And then, everything fell apart. It started with a single text from one of my closest friends. "Hey, I need to tell you something about Josh. It's bad." My stomach dropped as I stared at the screen. I called her immediately, my voice trembling as I asked, "What's going on?" She hesitated, then said, "He showed us a nude photo of you. At a party. He was drunk and he was bragging about your sex life." The words hit like a slap to the face. "What? No. That doesn't sound like him," I stammered, my heart racing. "I wouldn't lie about this," she said softly. "Ask the others." And I did. One by one, 5 or 6 of my closest friends confirmed the story. Each time, their words felt like another knife twisting in my chest. They described how Josh had laughed as he passed around his phone, detailing our most intimate moments like they were some kind of joke. I felt sick. Humiliated. Betrayed. This wasn't the Josh I knew. It couldn't be. But how could so many people lie about something like this? When I confronted Josh, he looked at me like I'd just told him the sky was green. "What the heck are you talking about?" he asked, his voice sharp with confusion. "They said you showed them a picture of me. A nude picture. And you talked about us," I said, my voice breaking. His face twisted in anger. "That's a lie. I would never do that to you. Never." But I couldn't shake the voices of my friends, their certainty, their disgust. Why would they lie? I demanded, tears streaming down my face. "I don't know," he shouted, running his hands through his hair. "But I didn't do it. I swear to God, I didn't." The fight escalated, his frustration boiling over as he begged me to believe him. "You know me," he said, his voice cracking. "You know I would never hurt you like that." But I didn't know what to believe anymore. And when he showed up at my place later, while some of my friends were there, the tension exploded. Voices were raised, accusations flew, and when Josh tried to defend himself, one of my friends shoved him. It got physical. I screamed at him to leave. And he did. But not before looking at me with tears in his eyes and saying, "You're making the biggest mistake of your life." Breaking up with Josh felt like ripping my heart out of my chest. He begged me to reconsider, his voice desperate and raw. "Please," he said, his hands trembling as he held mine. "Don't do this. Don't let them ruin us." But all I could think about was that photo, those stories, and the betrayal. "I can't," I whispered, pulling away. I can't." He left, slamming the door behind him. I collapsed onto the floor, sobbing until I couldn't breathe. I loved him so much, but how could I stay with someone who'd humiliated me like that? A few months later, I started dating Alex. He was one of the friends who'd told me about Josh. Everyone in our group had been pushing for it, saying we'd be perfect together. But it wasn't the same. Alex was sweet, but he wasn't Josh. Our relationship felt forced, like I was trying to convince myself that I could move on. After a few months, we broke it off. We stayed friends, but something about it all felt wrong. Like I was living someone else's life. Today, everything came crashing down. It started with a message from another friend. "I need to tell you something," it read. "About Josh." My hand shook as I typed back, "What is it?" The truth came out in a flood of words that made my head spin. The story about Josh? The photo? The intimate details? All lies. They'd made it up because they didn't like him. Because they thought he wasn't good for me. Because they wanted me to date Alex. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring as tears filled my eyes. I called Alex, demanding to know if it was true. He hesitated, then admitted everything. "We thought we were helping you," he said. "We didn't think it would go this far." Helping me? They'd destroyed me. They'd destroyed Josh. I spent hours in the office bathroom, sobbing until my chest ached. My mind raced with memories of Josh, his smile, his laugh, the way he'd looked at me like I was his whole world. How could I have believed them? How could I have let them ruin us? And my friends, the people I'd trusted since high school. How could they do this to me? To him? I felt hollow, like everything I'd known was a lie. I wanted to scream, to punch something, to make them understand the depth of what they'd done. But more than anything, I wanted Josh. I wanted to tell him I was sorry. That I'd been wrong. That I still loved him. I unblocked him on Facebook and stared at the message button for what felt like hours. What could I even say? How could I explain what had happened? Would he even want to hear from me? Finally, I typed, "Josh, can we talk? I need to tell you something. I'm so sorry." I hovered over the send button, my heart pounding. I didn't know if he'd respond, if he'd forgive me, or if I even deserved his forgiveness. But I had to try. Because maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to fix what had been broken. To find closure. To find him again. With a deep breath, I hit send. The email was a last-ditch effort, a desperate leap into the unknown. I had spent the better part of a year trying to convince myself that I'd done the right thing, that I'd made the only choice I could have made at the time. But no matter how much I tried to rationalize it, the truth gnawed at me. I hadn't trusted Josh when it mattered most. And I'd lost him because of it. Josh wasn't just my first serious boyfriend, he was the person I'd imagined spending my life with. We had plans, dreams, a future that felt so certain it was almost tangible. Losing him had felt like losing a part of myself. But even then, I'd convinced myself I was doing the right thing. My friends said he betrayed me. They said he wasn't good for me. And I believed them. Now, knowing the truth, I couldn't stop replaying every moment we'd shared, every decision I'd made, and every way I'd let him down. I missed him. I missed us. And so, against every piece of advice I'd gotten, I sat down on Friday and sent him an email. It wasn't perfect, how could it be? But it was honest. And it was all I had left to give. The email was simple, raw, and humiliatingly vulnerable. I apologized for not trusting him, for breaking us, for letting other people's lies dictate the course of our relationship. I told him I missed him, everything about him. I told him I wasn't over him. And then, in a moment of probably misguided bravery, I asked if he'd want to grab a drink sometime. As soon as I hit send, I felt a strange sense of relief. Writing it, putting it all out there, was cathartic in a way I hadn't expected. But the relief was quickly replaced by anxiety. What if he didn't respond? What if he hated me? What if he'd moved on and didn't care about anything I had to say? I spent the rest of Friday trying to distract myself, compulsively checking my email and phone, waiting for some kind of response. By Saturday morning, I'd resigned myself to silence. I figured I'd said my piece, and that was all I could do. I curled up on the couch in my robe, watching old movies, trying to ignore the gaping hole in my chest. Then the doorbell rang. I ignored it at first, assuming it was an Amazon delivery. But after a minute or two, curiosity got the better of me. I shuffled to the door, still in my robe, and peeked through the peephole. My breath caught in my throat. It was Josh. I froze, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it from the other side of the door. My mind raced. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't dressed. My apartment was a disaster. But there he was, standing on my doorstep, waiting. I cracked the door open, trying to appear calm, though I was anything but. "Hi," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I need to get dressed really quick." He smiled, a small, familiar smile that sent a jolt through me. "Okay," he said simply. I shut the door, then immediately began running around like a lunatic. I threw clothes into corners, shoved dishes into the sink, pulled my hair back, and frantically tried to make myself look presentable. When I finally opened the door again, I was still breathless. "I'm here for that beverage," he said, his tone light but his eyes serious. My heart swelled and sank at the same time. Of course, I hadn't thought to stock anything impressive. "I only have orange juice and water," I admitted, my face burning with embarrassment. Josh chuckled, stepping inside. "Orange juice is fine." We sat down on my couch, the air thick with unspoken words. I wanted to dive into everything, the lies, the breakup, the pain, but Josh stopped me before I could even start. "We both know all the details now," he said, his voice steady. "We don't need to rehash it." There was something so Josh about that, his ability to cut through the noise and focus on what mattered. And so, instead of dwelling on the past, we talked. At first, it was awkward, like we were trying to remember how to navigate each other's rhythms. But slowly, the conversation began to flow. We talked about work, about life, about nothing in particular. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. After a while, Josh asked if I was hungry. I wasn't, not really, but I said yes anyway. We ended up at the burger place we used to go to all the time. It felt surreal, sitting across from him in a booth that held so many memories. At one point, he asked, "So, did you date Alex?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah. For a little while." He didn't seem upset, just thoughtful. "Makes sense," he said, and left it at that. I asked if he'd dated anyone. He told me about a 6-month relationship he'd had. She sounded wonderful, kind, smart, funny. I tried not to let it sting. After all, I'd been the one to let him go. When we got back to my place, Josh lingered at the door. "What are you doing for the rest of the day?" he asked. "Nothing," I said. "No plans." "Good," he replied. And just like that, we slipped back into something that felt so natural, so easy, it was almost like no time had passed at all. We spent the rest of the day together. And the night. It was fast, probably too fast, but I couldn't bring myself to care. For the first time in a year, I felt happy. Really, truly happy. Over the next few days, we saw each other again. And again. By Wednesday, we were sitting on my couch, talking about what we were doing. "Two single people dating each other," Josh said, a small smile playing on his lips. "Exclusive?" I asked, holding my breath. "Yeah," he said. "Exclusive." It's hard to put into words how I feel now. Part of me is still weighed down by regret, by the knowledge of what I put him through. But another part of me, maybe the bigger part, is hopeful. I trust him completely. I always did, deep down. And now, I trust myself to hold on to him. Will it work out? I don't know. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like we have a chance. And that's more than I could have hoped for.